Welcome to the Daily AI News Digest for June 11th, 2026. This broadcast is sponsored by bestai.org. Let's look at today's market realities. We're cutting straight through the noise to examine the structural shifts happening right now across capital markets, infrastructure, and federal policy.
Here's the rundown for today. We'll be covering four critical areas: the head-to-head trillion-dollar IPO filings, shifts toward agent-first model architectures, some sudden federal interventions in AI infrastructure, and those immediate deprecation deadlines you need to know about.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the IPO race between OpenAI and Anthropic.
The race to public liquidity is officially underway, following their confidential S-1 submissions. And honestly, the financial realities here are stark. OpenAI is entering the pipeline with an $852 billion private valuation and a $25 billion run rate. But Anthropic, they're countering with a $965 billion mark and a $47 billion run rate. Both of these giants are targeting a fall 2026 listing, and both are facing some really intense scrutiny over their actual path to profitability.
Now, before we move to the product side, we have to report on a significant operational shift at Anthropic today. Following an investigative report this morning, Anthropic has formally apologized and they've completely abandoned an undocumented system policy. So what was happening? This policy intentionally degraded the performance of their newly released Claude Fable 5 and Mythos 5 models for users who are suspected of training competing AI systems. The company actually acknowledged making the wrong trade-off between intellectual property defense and developer trust, and they're now pledging full transparency for any future guardrails.
Moving on to Section 2. Product and model realities, where we are seeing a definitive shift toward agent-first platforms.
For enterprise developers out there, Google is executing a major strategic pivot. They're officially retiring the legacy Gemini CLI in favor of the new anti-Gravity CLI. This isn't just a rebrand, it's a structural shift toward a unified agent-first platform that incorporates server-side harnesses and plugins. It really signals that Google expects developers to manage autonomous, multi-agent environments now, rather than just isolated chat models.
We're seeing this agentic overhaul over in Google's update to NotebookLM too. It's been rebuilt entirely on Gemini 3.5 and that new anti-gravity framework, turning NotebookLM into a fully autonomous research assistant. What's crucial here is that each notebook is now allocated its own secure, sandboxed cloud computer. This means the system can write and execute over 100 Python software skills autonomously. It synthesizes primary sources, executes statistical math, and then directly exports that raw data into formats you actually use, like PowerPoint, Excel, and Word documents.
Over on the research front, Google DeepMind just released DiffusionGemma. This is an experimental 25.2 billion parameter model, and it's interesting because it completely bypasses traditional autoregressive sequence generation. So instead of predicting text one word at a time like we're used to, it outputs entire 256 token blocks simultaneously. By mimicking the diffusion models we see in image generation and running parallel denoising passes, it essentially shifts the workload to high-throughput compute, totally bypassing those standard memory bandwidth bottlenecks. Returning to Anthropic for a moment, we finally have some hard facts on their subscription economics. While the retail focus is still on that $20 a month Claude Pro tier, the enterprise reality is looking quite different. For power users who need heavy context windows and those agentic coding workflows, Anthropic is heavily tiering access. The new Claude Max tier will cost you $200 per month for maximum access. I think this perfectly illustrates the growing divergence between casual consumer AI pricing and the actual cold cost of heavy enterprise inference.
All right, Section 3, Regulation, Policy, and Business Signals, specifically focusing on physical infrastructure.
This morning, a newly released threat report from OpenAI detailed a PRC-linked covert influence operation dubbed the Data Center Bandwagon Campaign. According to their intelligence findings, this operation is actively targeting U.S. infrastructure buildouts. The core objective here is to manipulate local public debates and actually stall the physical construction of the data centers that are absolutely required to maintain American AI capabilities.
In direct response to these specific infrastructure vulnerabilities, the Trump administration issued an executive order back on June 2nd. This order mandates the formation of a joint AI cybersecurity clearinghouse by the NSA, CISA, and the Treasury Department, all within a tight 30-day window. The goal was to establish a unified front for vulnerability detection and to coordinate the cyber defense of what the administration is now officially designating as covered frontier models.
Concurrently, there are ongoing active negotiations right now regarding a U.S. public wealth fund taking a direct equity position in OpenAI.
As these frontier models become increasingly central to national defense and economic productivity, we are watching the boundary between private corporate entities and sovereign national security architecture rapidly dissolve.
That brings us to Section 4, the analyst's take. Let's talk about the physical bottleneck.
We have to cut through the marketing noise here because the scale of the physical challenge is just staggering. A recent United Nations study warns that AI data centers could consume 945 terawatt-hours of electricity annually by 2030. That sheer level of consumption generates massive physical vulnerabilities. Frankly, it explains exactly why state-sponsored actors are targeting local power substation buildouts right now rather than just attempting to steal algorithmic weights.
And this physical constraint ties directly back into that IPO math we discussed earlier. OpenAI's projected 2026 cash burn is estimated at $25 billion. Despite nearly tripling their revenue, their gross margins are sitting at roughly 33%. Why? Because of structural inference costs, literally the physical cost of GPU compute every single time a query is run. As they approach the public markets with an implied 35 times forward revenue multiple, you can bet investors are going to be demanding a very clear path to driving those physical inference costs down.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, the watch list, focusing on upcoming deprecation deadlines.
If you're managing systems, there are two hard cutoffs you need to monitor next week. First, on Monday, June 15th, Anthropic is formally deprecating its legacy Claude Sonnet 4 and Claude Opus 4 models. Any automated API requests routed to those older versions will fail. Following that, on Thursday, June 18th, Google will officially terminate its legacy Gemini CLI and Code Assist extensions, meaning all of your workflows must transition to the new Antigravity CLI. So make sure you plan your migrations accordingly.
That concludes today's analysis of the market realities shaping the AI sector. Right now, the market is waiting on the public release of those audited financials from both OpenAI and Anthropic, but a critical question remains. As AI infrastructure officially becomes a matter of national security, will these private entities actually be able to maintain their autonomy? Or are they ultimately destined to become heavily regulated utilities? Thank you for tuning into this broadcast. Remember to visit our sponsor, bestai.org, and we'll see you next time.